Welcome to the second edition of Lambda Test TestMu conference and to the first panel discussion of this season. I'm your host, Mohit, joining you live from Bangalore, India. I love to work with technology partners, and today I have some of the visionary leaders from the test ecosystem here with me. Now, before we start, I would like to thank all our partners who have been supporting us and are part of this event with us. To all the lovely audience and attendees out there, quick call out to you. All of us and all the speakers, all the panelists are here to share their insights, lots of hard work. So please share your love. Go click those emojis and tell us that you are with us right here. At the end of the session, we'll also try to take some Q&As from you. So keep the questions rolling on the chat window. Okay, now with that, let's set the stage for the much awaited panel discussion on removing interrupts from end-to-end test automation workflows. Now, interrupts in software testing workflows can, of course, lead to inefficiencies, bottlenecks, which hinders the agility with which testers are expected to ensure high-quality release cycles, right? And ensuring that testers are able to stay in flow is very critical. Essentially, organizations with faster, high-quality release cycle are going to outshine their peers, and that's why ensuring testers stay in flow is very important. And our panelists today are here to share their insights, experiences, and also strategies to tackle this challenge head on. Now, with that, let me introduce our esteemed panelists on this panel discussion today. First up, we have Artem Golubev, co-founder of TestRigor and a huge advocate of QA effectiveness and faster software delivery. Next, we have 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐞𝐦 𝐆𝐨𝐥𝐿, CTO at Catalan, a visionary on how AI can be used in test automation and software quality management. Next, we have Mav Turner, Chief Technology Officer at Tricentis. Mav oversees research and development as well as product growth and strategy at Tricentis. Please welcome Nishant Joseph from XLQ, a strategic leader in technology partnership, driving global collaboration. Welcome Richard Clark, Chief Strategy Officer at Privard, championing low no-code solutions for testing. Last but not the least, please welcome Tamar Sachabia, founder at Sensit.io, an inclusivity advocate, truly missioning out, bridging digital divides. So let's get right into it. I'm very excited. So here, reaching out to first Richard, 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐞𝐦, and Tamar with my first question on understanding the landscape. So given your vast experience on this panel and in this industry, can you please reflect on how end-to-end test automation has evolved over the last decade, highlighting a few pivotal changes or trends that have shaped the current landscape? Richard, let's start with you first, and then we'll go to 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐞𝐦 and Tamar. Yeah.
Sure thing, Mohit. So I think you hit the nail on the head with your intro there. I think the most pivotal change in the last decade has been the shift from monolithic applications to microservices. And that's driven that rise, that adoption of CI/CD platforms, that continuous delivery approach, and the need for testing to operate in that theater. So it needs to be part of the pipeline, not something you do at the end of the process. Understanding the differences between the value of testing during integration, during deployment. And as a result of that, we've seen much greater maturity and awareness in our users. So 10 years ago, end-to-end was focused on vertical testing. So you'd look at the application tiers, the UI, the API, databases, emails, message queues, etc., web services. In the last 5 years, more of our customers are looking at horizontal end-to-end testing. We want to automate the UI and API across different business systems and test business processes, not just applications. And I think while we're known for being the best tool for testing Salesforce, that doesn't limit the ability to test other applications like Workday, ServiceNow, etc. So what we've done is leverage platforms like Lambda Test to be able to scale our test cases on demand, run multiple test plans synchronously and scheduled, deliver in-sprint testing for CI/CD pipelines, and that gives that massive parallel testing capability.
Yeah.
Thanks, Richard.
Picking up. Oh, sorry, I was just going to jump in, but picking up where Richard started too, I think that I'll probably end up talking about this a few times during our panel today, but I constantly come back to the increased pace of delivery. And you start out with how do we get interrupts out of end-to-end test automation? And I think the reason we're all focused on doing that is because there's less and less opportunity for that in our delivery cycles and what people expect of us in what we're doing. We've all seen the infinite loop. And so one thing that strikes me is, sort of as Richard talked about, that testing has had to, spread out. And this isn't maybe a decade deal, because I think we were already into this process a decade ago. But, I've been doing this long enough that I remember when testing was a thing that came at the end of, a long waterfall cycle. And today we're so far from that. We've got to be doing it, at the very beginning of our coding, and then all the way up until the end, we've got people testing in production, and we make fun of that. But I think it's actually productive. I think that people need to be watching what's happening at the beginning of their cycle, what's happening at the end. And we really do need to be having more feedback loops from all of those environments. Another thing that it did strike me as we were talking about, what's happened over 10 years and a little bit while Richard was talking, is the things we're testing go so much further now than they used to. Like, we've got so many more customers now coming to me to talk about, how do I test, elements of my infrastructure? Because I'm spinning up this infrastructure to, run a new version of my application. I'm putting out new VMs constantly during the day. And how do I make sure that those are coming up correctly and all the network around them? So, it's really just more and more testing all through the cycle, through more teams. And I think that we're all here to figure out how we empower those people to deal with that pace of delivery and pace of change. I'd love to hear Tamar's.
I mean, I'm going to continue, Cody, at what you said, which continued what Richard said, and I'm coming from the digital accessibility space. So I'm coming in to advocate for accessibility testing, and everything that we keep hearing from clients saying we need to add accessibility testing. How can we do it more efficiently? How can we add it into CI? How can we create it in a way that we're testing for more, but in what needs to be done? So some say compliance and some say, inclusivity and whatnot. And my take on this is that, Richard had said it, that things have changed in the testing world in the last 10 years. Well, so have things changed in the accessibility testing world, or the digital accessibility, in that we understand, or at least I hope, this is my vision, that accessibility and testing can't be step brothers or so far apart. We have to bring them together, and we have to bring them together more than just code reviews or scanners like we've had today. So that's where I come from, and that's what I've been researching and developing for the last 5 years. And we've really come 180 degrees, understanding that the testing world really doesn't know how to grasp digital accessibility, because it is an interrupt. And how can we make it kind of part of the cycle and part of the flow? Instead of finding more errors per se, how can we just create it to find the critical problems early on, right? Because we keep saying, let's go early. And I've seen that change. It's being adopted as we speak. It's not there yet. It's very, very early on, but there's no doubt in my mind that accessibility testing is going to be what performance testing was and where it is today in the next, years to come, so long as the tools that we're developing today are coincide with what clients need, as well as what accessibility is all about. So that's how I see the change in end-to-end testing, understanding that, accessibility has to be in. What we have today is just not enough, but we've got to include it, if it's good enough, and we'll reach the maximum, maximize the potential in the few years coming.
Couldn't agree more. From testing first mindset already becoming part of every step to digital accessibility now becoming very, very important. Let's switch gears towards challenges at scale. And I'm going to go to Artem, Nishan, and Mao for it. My next question to three of you is, in large scale and complex organizations, automation bottlenecks can really become magnified, right? And so from your strategic vantage point, what challenges are unique to these large scale settings, and how can they be effectively addressed? Over to you, Artem.
Yes, it had been changing. If you remember mythical man months, it used to be manual testing. Then people realized, hey, we need to scale that. So then automation came along. And then at this point, I believe we're hitting another scaling point where that's not enough, because today, from what we have seen, is only 30% of all test cases are automated. How is it possible? Automation had been around for 20 years. That's because it doesn't scale. And why it doesn't scale? Because, well, like there are certain ways we're not doing how we should be doing. And for example, testing more details of implementation as opposed to testing how it should look like from an user's perspective. And the tools, recent tools like generative AI and such really help out in that regard, making it possible what was not really possible even a year ago. And it's now all about scale, right? How do you not just do some automation? How do you make it scalable such that you can actually achieve your goals? And I believe that in modern world, you can't live without sufficient automation. And well, there are multiple reasons to that, but the simplest one would be security. Imagine that there is yet another new zero-day security vulnerability coming out. Then you are faced with a choice. You deploy a patch and don't test your functionality, or you test your functionality, but then maybe you deploy your patch a little bit too late. So none of those is a good choice. So you definitely have to do automation right now and have to scale it to be able to adapt to modern realities.
Nishan, over to you.
Point. Yeah, Artem, thank you. Thanks for that. So I would actually classify maybe the challenges into like three major buckets, right? This tech, process, and people. And these challenges obviously are amplified in large-scale organizations, right? So in tech, as the saying goes, the chain is only as strong as the weakest link, right? Tech landscapes span across like legacy desktop applications to like mainframes to like file systems and to more modern digital apps, etc., right? And several of these may or may not have downstream and upstream integrations as well. The ability to kind of test end to end, validate a real world user journey is critical, right? And it's a massive challenge for like most organizations, right? From a process standpoint, I mean, imagine the world of complexity with just, let's say 10 such systems in an end-to-end flow, right? Each system may be on a different release level, for example, and let's say you have a test suite for like working in one sprint, in an epic with like maybe different like, feature initiatives, and maybe it's for the same dependent product, right? With maybe slight deviations in the interface, right? Change management becomes extremely complicated as soon as you start bringing all these into the mix, right? And this is where a platform like 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐞 can actually help organizations kind of see you through those, multiple permutation combinations to like manage those like various like dependencies, for example, isolate them and then kind of branch them independently. Essentially, you're kind of bringing in good test management process and practices, right? And the final is actually people. Large organizations, we all know, have a mix of like multiple service providers, service vendors, internal staff, etc. And having these teams kind of work together rather than in isolation is a significant challenge, right? So that's where, again, automation platforms need to have that collaborative mechanism kind of built into it to kind of mitigate this as well. So those are the three key aspects which I would want to highlight.
Yeah, and Nishan took a little bit of my framework as well, because I have three reactions there, but they're not the people, process, technology. I'm going to focus a little bit more on the process and the people and the complexity that creates at scale. Because most of the time when I'm working with the very large enterprise, yes, there's technical challenges and things they need to solve, but usually it's the organizational change that's the hardest thing to get through. So for example, number one, the interlocks between different teams that are different stages of maturity and process and different goals. How do those teams work together? Skill set training, number two, right? Do they have the modern skills? Do they have time to ramp up? The answer is no, they don't have the time or resources to ramp up the people. Number three, the impact of larger corporate initiatives that they're not expecting. So all of a sudden something flies in and now they have a new security compliance. They have a new process expectation requirement right before they ship. And these are things that no matter how much planning you do and trying to get ahead of it are always going to be part of these interrupts are always going to be part of the process. So when I think about it at a big picture, those are the three things that I think have the biggest challenges for these larger scale organizations to be successful. One of the things Richard mentioned earlier was kind of the shift from monoliths to microservices. And that's how I think about solving some of the problems with the different teams, right? Like how do these teams have APIs, their contracts, so that I know what to expect from these dependencies. But the reality is it's easy to say that. Super hard to do that. Most people can't formalize those agreements and they work it out and then everybody complains about too many meetings. But so these are really the challenges that we have at scale. I really don't, yes, there's technical things and different choice and vendors, like we're all here trying to help customers through, but at that largest scale, it really comes down to those processes and then making sure you're investing in your people and nurturing, because the business always wants to move faster and always wants to be more efficient. And that's the mission. There's always less resources, more output. So how do we be successful in those circumstances is really, I think, as Nishan said, people, process, technology, you always apply that framework. How are you moving forward in each of those to make an impact and to improve?
No, great. People, processes, tool sets goes back to what Artem says, that still we are just 40% on the automation journey on an average in organization. So let's go one level deeper at some of the strategic bets that organizations end up taking. So with the proliferation of tools and platform in the market, strategic tool integration is more crucial than ever, right? Tooling soup is almost a similar observation or a situation in most of the large organizations, right? So how do your respective companies approach this integration? Would love to hear from you, 𝐀𝐫, Mav, and Tamar, that how are your respective companies approach the strategic tool integration, ensuring that the bigger picture is always in view, while the developer and testers, they still have the choice of diverse tool sets that they might want to use?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it is something we get caught between, because we have, like probably everybody else in our organization, we have some competing goals. And, one of our goals, and we also have competing goals across, or sort of needs across our customer base, because we serve everybody from, small teams to, global corporations. And, we want to make working with Catalan or test automation easy for all of them, and that means different things. So at the low end, typically what we find is useful is to have things that are built to work together. So it's not going to be a big pitch, but we have a test automation development platform, we have a reporting platform, we have an execution platform. Those things fit together easily, they're built together. And wired to work. At the same time, even there may already be tools that people have chosen to perform any, one or multiple of those processes. And when you get into the enterprise, that is indisputably the case. So, at the same time, we try to focus on, standards and whether they're formal standards or just community standards that have developed, so that other things can be plugged into our system. And we're fortunate, and I think all of us try to take advantage of this. And when we think about things that are changed over 10 years, I think one of the things that has evolved is increased community involvement in, and in the integration between companies and their communities. So, one thing we take advantage of is our community and the things they build around us. And I think the same thing is probably true of Lambda Test and testRigor and others. We try to listen to what is being developed out in the world and figure out how we can help that work with our tools. I forget who was next.
Yeah.
Did someone else want to go?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that I think the I agree, Cody. A lot of that is it comes down to open or closed ecosystem. So a vendor can make a choice and say, closed ecosystem, we're going to come in and we want to own the entire stack, and you need to consolidate on us. That is a valid strategy. Now, I don't believe that's a winning strategy personally, and I think most of us would probably agree that open ecosystem, especially in the large enterprise, there's no way you're going to get that consolidation at scale. And as a vendor, I'm going to be more successful coming in, interplaying with the existing systems and technology and solving problems for you and making your life easier, and not saying, okay, well, if you want to use my tool, you got to get rid of this one and that one, and you got to like standardize and change process of 100 different development teams in order to move over to my tool. That's going to be a really hard play. At the same time, a lot of people are looking at tool consolidation, vendor consolidation. The soup that you were talking about. They want to simplify, and so I think as vendors, our job is to simplify out of the box integrations. Cody's point about community content, super critical. How do we make that easy to extend? How do you have open APIs, platforms well documented? Make it easy for everyone on this call to be successful with their job and not get too caught around the vendor lock-in or trying to force some way, because most of the time the individual teams, testers, developers, they actually get stuck in the mix there. Like, I just want to do my job, I want to be successful, and if as vendors we require them to make bigger changes, that's a hindrance, and that actually prevents them from being successful versus enabling them. So
I just have to interject. I love that you keep bringing organization and process in, because that is such a critical element of this, because we think about, the technologies work together, we can just wire those together, but that is often not the problem. It's not, right. Can we run on this other thing? It's our organization needs to do this thing. It needs to do it this way.
I agree with both of you, and I think Mav said it very well in terms of vendors. So coming from my space accessibility, I can't fathom, a world where I'm coming in just on my own. Collaboration is definitely needed, both on the business level. There's just no way to come in and say, take a tool for accessibility if your business executives are not on board. But more so between the vendors, from everything that I've worked in the testing world, is super important, because coming in as an accessibility, digital accessibility testing platform tool, whatever it may be, it can't be done alone. And if it's not integratable or doesn't work well, open, not open source, but open, I'm missing the word. It's bilingual. Sorry. If we're not able to integrate with other systems as well, so that we're building it on the lowest level possible, if we were doing Selenium, so that it's really universal, then we had no chance of even getting in. And that we learned also through testing and retesting what's going to be best. So working with Lambda Test and any other vendors, what their needs are in order to service clients. That's where we're coming from in accessibility. So collaboration, and a lot of open conversations within the organization to be able to integrate, but also with the vendors to be able to service the clients in the right way.
Super fascinating. So competing goals in organizations, and I think a great suggestion on leaning in to hear more from community and having a universal approach. So it all boils down to how are we really fostering innovation within an organization. So Richard, Artem, and Nishan, my next question is to you. Innovation often comes from overcoming adversity, right? Some of the challenges really leads to great solutions. So could each one of you share a time where your organization faced a significant challenge in test automation and how it drove you to innovate or pivot your strategy to really create something which is usable out there in the world?
Sure, let me kick that one off, if that's okay. So that's a great segue, Tamar, because actually I totally agree. We recently saw an opportunity to enhance our parallel testing. It could have been accessibility. We were previously using Selenium grids, local Selenium grids customers, remote browser platforms, including Lambda test. And performance wasn't what our customers needed. It wasn't delivering what they needed. Security wasn't meeting their needs. We were doing a lot of work supporting those customers. The results were not consistent enough either. And we had issues with our application about how we merged those results into the reports that our customers needed that were proof that something was working, especially in those large regulated industries. So what we did with Lambda test is pivot from building everything ourselves. We're not an infrastructure company. Setting up Docker containers is easy. Running the infrastructure underneath and monitoring it, managing it is not what we do. We do testing tools. So we worked with Lambda test to launch our mass execution product on the HyperExecute platform, which I think was a previous session to this one, rather than build it from scratch ourselves. So we leveraged something that was already there. And one, it's more cost effective for our end customers and ourselves. It gave us that greater flexibility. We got the product to pilot, I think, maybe in 1 month. Your guys did sterling work with ours, and we went to GA in under 6 months. So I think the ability to leverage other people in this call, other technologies, and partner rather than try and build everything ourselves is massively important for driving innovation. And then we can focus on our own product specialisms and invest our time, SMEs, and skills in enhancing the things. The reasons why people bought our platform wasn't for our parallel testing, was for our other capabilities. We're also now seeing that people mentioned generative AI. So we all got generative AI, I'm sure, in our products. We've seen other products throw on a conversational AI over the top and say, we've got AI. It's a new user interface. I think, again, we have to be very careful about the use of AI in our technology to solve business problems for our customers going forward, and not having to harvest billions of data points in order to do it, and do it in an ethical way. But yeah, I think that's the next opportunity for all of us, is how we use that responsibly.
Do you want to go next?
Yeah, I completely agree. So Richard stole my point a little bit. I agree. It was kind of a huge eye-opening for us that at the end we all solve our customers' problem. It's not just something isolated in a box. And now we happy to talk to our customers and prospects and tell them, hey, we support 5,000 combinations of all OSs and browsers now, because we work with Lambda test. That's what was great. Amazing support from Lambda test. And when we looked into that, we actually we have to, as in the previous session was mentioned, you have to integrate everywhere across the board with everyone. Everyone is connected, if not directly, then through something else, right? It's all not just ecosystem, but ultra connected ecosystem right now. And what we have seen is that Lambda test just literally outperforms everyone, just leave everyone in the dust. It's so much better, so much more responsive, performant. People will work with you on your challenges and make sure everything is working smoothly and resolved very quickly. So it was amazing. It's definitely an amazing experience. But point, I agree. And I like Richard left me basically no points to talk about. I completely agree. So this is all about customers. And another point, which is everybody, I'm sure, is leveraging, is generative AI, which I believe will change how efficient everything is across the board. And people do want it, and they do need it, because, hey, like, it can help somehow, Maybe it's not going to take over, and cook breakfast for you, but if it improve your performance 10%, that's great.
True. Valid points, Artem. And I'm kind of going to focus on the platform and not the the tech ecosystem itself, right? And if you really think about it, adversity is really what's truly driving innovation in any organization, right? So we are constantly in the lookout for like feedback from our prospective clients and our existing customers, and which is when we kind of start kicking the tires, try to come up with mechanisms to kind of eliminate any bottleneck, if any, right? And the point is that it's not just adversity. The bigger challenge is the lack of clarity in the feedback from the customer, right? And the success in building any automation platform strategy is the ability to decipher that feedback, understand what is the noise, clearly recognize the facts, identify the steps, and know the pain points, and then fixing it by getting to the root cause, right? And then finding this cohesive solution that is still rooted and aligned with the core philosophy of your platform itself. So at 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐞, all through our existence, this is exactly what we've done. We've fundamentally multiple times over, we are 100% organically grown company. We do not acquire. We integrate wherever essential, but otherwise we essentially build everything in-house from the ground up. And that's one of the key points as far as from our innovative and how we've actually pivoted our strategy as well.
Couldn't have been put more succinctly. Ability to really decipher the feedback. So really listen to the customers. We hear it all the time. And great point on be smart about build versus buy choices and really focus on the core of the value proposition that the organization has been building. So from innovation to really building towards the future, right? So Tamar, Koti, Artem, I'm going to come to you for this one. Thinking ahead, where do you envision the future of end-to-end test automation the next 5 to 10 years? So let's look forward. And what major shifts or advancement do you predict? And how are your organizations preparing for this future? Tamar, over to you for this one.
Yeah, I think I answered this in the first question that I'm a visionary, and I have no doubt that accessibility testing is going to be an integral part of end-to-end testing. It's a matter of time, and in the next 5 to 10 years, we're not going to be talking about accessibility testing as something that we have to do. It's just something that we're doing as part of the testing, and I believe that it's going to be much more efficient, and it's not going to affect performance. Right now we're just in the starting point of test automation for accessibility, different than what we've known until today, which is just code scanning. And I do believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see that this is just something that we can completely cover within end-to-end testing without a doubt. And it's going to cover us for those that, it's the minimal compliance, and those of us that have to maximize it for federal government organizations and whatnot, like the highest levels of accessibility. That's where I see it. There's no doubt in my mind that it's going to be, it's not going to be an interrupt anymore.
Yeah, I'm always, whenever I get these, what's it going to be like 5 or 10 years from now? I find them daunting because if I look back to 2013, I'm not sure I would have foreseen a whole lot of 2023, but I'll take a shot. 3 things, sort of categories of things occur to me. One, I've already kind of hit it at, how we test. I just think that we're going to need to integrate signals from all along the life cycle more than we do today. We're going to need to, and we see this starting, right? We should be looking upstream at source code as it's being created, maybe even designs as they're being created, and understanding how they're going to impact the system as we move through it, and multiple systems, because we're building systems out of other systems today. It's no longer like we're compiling one binary that we ship. And then we're going to need to watch what's happening in production to figure out what do we need to change? How are people using our software differently? Because it's not always that there's an error in production. Sometimes it's just usage changes. And I think that's just going to accelerate. I also think about, what tools will we as vendors, software providers, deliver to our customers? And I think there, not surprisingly, a lot is going to be built on top of generative AI and other machine learning. But particularly generative AI has opened up a whole new world for us in only the last 6 months to a year, of the ability to manage data that we didn't really have a good way to manage in the past. And that's mass textual data. The way that we can parse it and have systems understand it is going to enable us to empower our customers to react in ways they haven't in the past. Already, we see this with, doing analysis of error messages in our systems and suggesting resolutions to customers. I know other people are working on similar features, but as all these signals are kind of coming in, we're going to need to give quality engineers and quality professionals a way to interact with the system at a high level. And what we imagine is that there's going to be less of scripting this and defining that, and more of sort of driving a system, or directing a system as you're getting feedback from it. This isn't working. Take a look at that. These things are failing. Go look and see what's happening in this underlying system. Maybe it's a database or some other backend system. And finally, a little bit to tomorrow's opening, I think about all the new modalities that are going to be open to us and requiring testing. Right today, if we look back 10 years, mobile was probably certainly not as dominant as it is today. So now we've got all these mobile devices, we've got all these different browsers, but we've got AR and VR, mixed mode reality, coming to our. 10 years from now, if we're not periodically looking through something onto a world that gets stuff projected onto it, I'll be very surprised. And that's going to be challenging to test. Not to mention, voice interaction and just all the other ways that we're probably going to be interacting with these systems is going to be a whole new level of complexity for us. So I don't think, the good news is we're not going to be out of work. We've all got a lot to do. So I say that because every time we talk about AI, I feel like everybody's like, well, aren't we going to be able to get rid of everybody? Unless you don't have a backlog and unless you have no goals for the future, you're just going to have to, you're going to be expected to do more all along the way. So I think we got a lot to do. I think it's exciting, and I'll pass it on. I'll forget.
I would agree with Scotty. To quote a movie, "You're not in Kansas anymore," right? So literally within a couple years from now, everything will change so much that if you're not working with AI, then you might have hard times finding a job. It will not be just, hey, I know how to use this tool and that tool. That wouldn't be enough. You also being asked, hey, can you do prompt engineering? Can you work with the AI? And things like that. And why? Well, because you will get a lot of value from it. So if you can reduce the amount of work in order to be able to achieve the same thing, then people will be using it across the board. And what is surprising to me is the speed of change with what everything is changing. Like literally, automation, if you look into automation, it's kind of still going on, right? It started like 25 years ago, still going on. If you are looking into AI adoption, it's just bam, and it's almost all over the place. So the speed of change is increasing significantly. And if you look into that, I will probably extend a little bit on or maybe going a bit deeper on what 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐞𝐦 was saying. Again, I agree with everything what he said. I would just mention several areas. Right? Specifically, AI can help you to write more better unit tests. AI can assess what kind of end-to-end tests you would need to have for certain application or certain feature of certain application, and generate those for you. AI can then get those generated descriptions of what needs to be tested and actually build functional end-to-end tests for you, which actually work end-to-end on the system. And then you can intermingle AI with non-AI, right? So, hey, this is where AI is applicable. This is where AI is not applicable. And with always the different kind of stuff. And then AI will also help us to figure out which tests to execute in order to speed up executions, as well as I'm sure will be application in accessibility, which will make it more efficient, better, faster, and so on and so forth. Well, and on that, I guess I will pass it back to Mahid.
Great. No, great thoughts on so much more coming up our way, but also very empowering thoughts that none of us are going to go out of jobs. They're going to be more and more things that we need to create together. So with that, I think I would love to now go to each one of you with the concluding question for today's panel. And I think it's about legacy and the impact that we got to create. So as we draw our discussion to a close, considering your legacy and the impact of your organization in the industry, what message or guiding principle would you like to impart to the next generation of leaders in test automation? We'll go in the order of Artem, Koti, Richard, Tamar, Nishan, Mav, or you feel free to just contribute, and would love to hear your thoughts from each one of you on this.
I'll jump in first. And I'm going to wave the flag for accessibility and for those user stories that you're writing and thinking about what mainstream is, and it's just no longer mainstream. So you have personas that use your product differently, and that's something that needs to be an integral part, like I've said. I do think that the next generation, the Gen Zs, are looking at the impact. So what I would leave here with is that accessibility doesn't have to be the interrupt for you. It needs to be a part of what you're doing, because then you'll see that everything else is actually adjusting itself to something that's more simple to use, more user friendly, and then you have the cherry on top, which is accessible to those that actually need it. So my biggest impact is to continue working on what it is that we are working on, so that digital accessibility can be an integral part of end-to-end testing, and to remind everybody that's in testing that accessibility is a part of what you're doing and not just the other thing that we might need to think about, because it's going to have a positive effect on everything else.
Yeah, I believe that the job of QA would be closer to what product managers are doing right now, because in some sense, people in QA know applications much better than people in product, and they go into more details, and at some point either product managers will have to adapt and get deeper into that, or we will start literally losing the job to QA. But that also means that QA's job is elevated. Now, people in QA would need to start thinking more high level and how we make things work better, more efficiently on higher level compared to maybe nitty-gritty details, which will get automated away.
I would more time to, because I would love to. I could strongly disagree with your point there, so I'd love to debate that, but we don't have time, obviously. But I do want to build on the PM QA dynamic. But that's a very interesting topic, maybe for a future discussion. But I do want to build on that a little bit in some of the other dimensions, which is I think it's about that continuous improvement, continuous learning, change. Like, how do you think about that intentionally and get better and learn? Because it will change. That's the one constant, right? And I hate to be, everybody says that it's cliche, but it's very true. And a lot of these things that are cliche are true for a reason, right? So how do you think about continuous improvement? How do you think about getting better? Whether that's, you look at something and you're, wow, we have no automation at all. We're all manually testing. How do we get better? You get better piece by piece, little by little, and with intentionality. So it's be intentional about that improvement and don't get overwhelmed by this massive change that you have to push through, because that's what kills a lot of the projects. But look for that small slice of value you can move forward today, and you'll add value to the business. You'll feel good about it because you're making an impact, and just keep doing that, and you'll be surprised at how much you can do.
Just to echo those points, just want to say that if going back to the question as well about the impact and the principles, so we succeeded by understanding our customer market beyond just the technical needs. We adopt cultural values and the mutual respect that existed in that marketplace, very highly prevalent, the Ahana culture of Salesforce. For the next generation of leaders, I think it's remember the core purpose remains constant. It's about delivering value by ensuring software quality. Everything else is a gimmick. You embrace some innovation, you ground it in empathy and collaboration. Automation is really there, a tool to empower humans, not replace them. It's about increasing productivity, keeping up with sprint velocities, reducing defects in production. That's really what everyone's trying to do in test automation, whether you're a customer or a partner. So let's always show respect for one another, like today. I think it's been fantastic. Focus on making your products better through continuous innovation. Be honest about your product capabilities and its limitations. And for customers, remember software providers should be long-term partners. You don't only get paid back in year one, you get it in 2, 3, 4. The biggest benefits come the longer you stay with those partners. So do invest in your partners, I'd advise.
Yeah, I love what Richard said about collaboration, and because part of what I think about, I talk about the technology of capturing signals and feeding them into the system, but ultimately what I want to see, what I hope we see as organizations evolve and become better at delivering value is that we empower people in all these different roles and all these different levels to get the information they need when they need it and deliver the information that others need when they need it, so that it's not just about your functional QA or your accessibility specialist or even your infrastructure specialist working in isolation, but that we have them tied together, all finding out what they need from the system and how it's delivering value to their end customers or their internal customers. So I think if I were to encourage leaders to do something, it's think about that. Think about how you get people engaged and collaborating, and how we're only a part of it, right? But a big part of it, software delivery and quality, how that can be a big part of collaboration in your organization.
Yeah, Cody, thank you for that. And that's a valid point. So, I mean, as an organization, it kind of pains us to know that, customers not achieving their desired ROI, or for example, there is something that we could have done simpler or better, right? So the founders of 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐞, and they've done this several times before, this is not their first rodeo. They learned from their past mistakes. They kept a pulse on the market, built a core team, and most importantly, they listened. We all listened to the customer. So as cliche as it may sound, customer is king, and that should be probably the key message that I want to kind of pass on to the next generation of leaders in the space.
That's a good one.
Super energizing. I can vouch for it that I have twice the energy I had before I joined, and so is the case with all the attendees. Few things are very clear, but let me first thank each one of you for really sharing such thoughtful guidance, nuggets of wisdom, and really 3 messages are really standing out from today's panel discussion. That first, users are going to look for more, customers are going to ask for more. So continuous change is something that we all have to be ready. And I think very simply put, but that's really the core of it, that delivering value and staying true to it is something which is going to be the success mantra. And I'm sure that people like me who are contributors, the support of visionary leaders like yours, who will bring about changes in organizations and will really prepare the ecosystem for these changes, will definitely help us to learn more, be ready for more, and deliver more. So thanks a lot for giving time to the QA community today. And we would love to answer all the questions from the attendees over the community channel. With that, we'll take your leave. Thanks a lot for joining us today for this great session. We hope you enjoyed it. Enjoy the rest of the sessions. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.